Princess Velrana sat in the diplomatic transport ship with her arms crossed and her eyes fixed on the stars outside the window. She had faced terrifying battlefield machines, stood before hostile admirals who wished for her death, and fought in palace chambers filled with political traps. None of those things had ever frightened her as much as the idea of marrying a human. The treaty between her people, the Cathari Empire, and the humans had been signed only 8 days earlier after years of conflict. It demanded one thing above all else: a marriage to show unity. Her marriage. And now, she was being carried to a human diplomatic station, where she would meet her new husband. She had prepared herself for the worst. She imagined a brutish military commander, with scars on his face and fire in his eyes. Humans, according to her people, were unpredictable creatures who pretended to be gentle until they found a weak spot. Velrana had been raised to see humans as clever rivals, always looking for a chance to manipulate others. She expected her husband to be loud, demanding, entitled, and proud of the rumors that humans took what they wanted. The thought made her stomach tighten, but she kept her expression still. She was a princess of the Cathari Empire, and she would not show fear. The transport landed on the human station without ceremony. Velrana's escort stood at full attention, expecting guards, soldiers, and a loud reception. Instead, the doors slid open to reveal only a small, quiet arrival hall. A single human stood waiting. He was tall but not overwhelmingly so, with short dark hair and calm eyes. He wore a clean officer's uniform, but he did not look like a fierce conqueror or a power-hungry general. He looked ordinary. Too ordinary. This, Velrana thought, must be the deception. He stepped forward with a polite, practiced posture and bowed his head slightly. The gesture startled her. Cathari bowed only to leaders of higher rank or to respected warriors. Why would a human bow to her? What game was he playing? Princess Velrana, he said in a soft voice that carried no threat. Welcome to Terra Nova Station. My name is Captain Elias Mercer. I am honored to meet you. Her escort translated his words through the small device at her ear, though she understood some of them already. She did not return his bow. She lifted her chin and answered in formal speech, her voice sharp and steady, trying to keep control of the situation. I have arrived to fulfill the treaty, she said. Nothing more. Elias did not look offended. He simply nodded, as if he had expected such formality. His expression remained respectful, not defensive. He did not try to move closer than appropriate. He did not examine her appearance or stare at her armor markings like many alien diplomats had done before. Instead, he stepped to the side and motioned toward the hallway. If you wish, I can show you to your quarters. You are free to rest, explore, or request anything you need. Velrana exchanged a puzzled look with one of her guards. She had expected demands, speeches, perhaps a symbolic ceremony to display human dominance. Instead, the human captain treated her like a dignified guest, calm and professional. It only increased her suspicion. No creature was this polite, without wanting something in return. Her escort remained outside the room once she reached the quarters prepared for her, while the door closed behind her. Velrana looked around. The space was clean, organized, softly lit, and surprisingly warm. Human comfort was very different from Cathari design, which focused on solid metal structures, efficiency, and bold colors. This room felt almost gentle. Too gentle. She heard footsteps outside before Elias's voice came through the door with respectful distance. Princess, I will remain nearby in case you need assistance. You may rest. There is no schedule tonight. Velrana narrowed her eyes. Again with the politeness. Humans were supposed to be impatient and always pushing their plans forward. Why was he giving her space? Why was he not asserting authority? She remained silent. Elias did not push. The footsteps faded away. Velrana sat down on the edge of the bed, her fingers tapping lightly on her knee, a habit she usually suppressed. She allowed herself a moment to examine the situation. Elias Mercer was different from anything she had prepared for. Her teachers had always told her humans were demanding, aggressive, fast in emotion, and faster in ambition. Yet this human seemed strangely calm, almost reserved. Perhaps this was a strategy, a soft approach to disarm her. Yes, that must be it. He would try kindness first, and once she relaxed, he would take advantage of the situation. It was the only explanation that made sense. She decided she would not be caught unprepared. She opened her portable tablet and began her methodical analysis. She wrote a new secret file, titled Observation of Human Spouse. Under it, she wrote her first note. The human husband is unexpectedly calm. This must be deliberate. She stood, adjusted her uniform armor, and stepped back out into the hallway. Elias was waiting but not standing guard. He was reading a book, an actual printed book, something rare among most starfaring species. He closed it gently and stood when she stepped out. "Do you require something?" he asked. Velrana studied him carefully. His posture was respectful, not defensive. He seemed genuinely ready to assist, without pushing anything on her. She decided to test him. "I want a tour of this station," she said in a sharp voice. He nodded immediately. "Of course. If it becomes tiring, we may stop at any time." 2. So consider it again. Suspicious. He led her through the main halls of the station. Humans they passed did not stare, whisper, or show signs of judgment. They saluted her formally, or greeted her with simple nods. No mocking smiles, no signs of superstition or fear. Velrana had expected discomfort at least, since humans had fought her people for years. Instead, the crew acted like she belonged here. That was strangely unsettling. Along the route, Elias explained basic areas: engineering, medical, the recreation deck, conference rooms. He never spoke in a bragging tone. He did not show off achievements. He simply told her facts and then allowed her to ask questions. When she tested him with difficult ones about station defense or supply logistics, he answered calmly without hiding information. She caught herself studying him the way she studied battlefield opponents. He moved efficiently, but without tension. His eyes always stayed aware, not just of her, but of the environment. He was calm, but not careless. He had the discipline of an experienced officer, just not the arrogance she expected. As they walked, she noticed small things. Human officers smiled at one another in passing. Engineers shared private jokes while working. The station felt alive, but without sharp emotion. It was a place that ran on cooperation instead of intimidation. When the tour ended, Elias escorted her back to the quarters door and spoke with the same respectful tone. "I know this is very new for you. If there is anything I can do to make this transition easier, you need only ask." Velrana simply nodded and stepped inside. The door closed quietly behind her. She leaned against the wall and took a slow breath. This was not what she had expected. Humans were supposed to be predictable in their ambition. Yet, Elias Mercer was unreadable in his simplicity. And that made him more dangerous than any loud conqueror. She returned to her tablet and typed her second observation. The human husband displays patience. Unknown motive. Continued analysis required. Quote, "For the first time that day, she could not decide whether she was more relieved or unsettled. The treaty marriage had begun, and she did not understand her new human husband at all. That would need to change." Velrana woke early the next morning, though she had barely slept. Her mind kept replaying every small detail from the night before. The calm tone of Captain Elias Mercer, his polite bow, the simple way he offered space instead of making demands. None of it fit the image she had been taught. The Cathari Empire believed humans fought for advantage at every moment, and she had expected her new husband to be the same. Yet Elias acted like he did not want to win anything at all. She dressed in formal uniform and stepped out of her quarters. Elias was already standing in the hallway, not blocking the door, not forcing conversation, simply present in case she needed something. He looked like he had been awake for hours, but he did not seem tired. His posture was steady, professional, and calm. "Good morning," he said with a slight nod. Velrana did not answer immediately. She studied him again, searching for the smallest flicker of hidden intention. But Elias simply waited, not pressured by her silence. She finally replied, "I will observe your daily activities today." "Of course," he said softly. "You are welcome to accompany me wherever I go." He did not ask why. He did not question her motives. That alone surprised her. Any Cathari would have demanded an explanation, even if only to measure threat. Humans were strange. He walked ahead at a measured pace, making sure she could keep up without hurrying. Velrana noted this small detail and added it to her mental list. He always made room for others. Maybe this was a cultural habit. Or maybe it was another tactic to catch her off guard. Their first stop was the command center of the station. Dozens of human officers were already working, reading reports, managing communications, or coordinating ship movements. Velrana expected loud orders, shouting, and arguments. Instead, she found a quiet room where everyone spoke clearly and respectfully, even when disagreeing. A young officer approached Elias with a tablet. "Captain, cargo inventories have been updated. Waiting for your verification." "Thank you," Elias replied, accepting the device. He did not bark instructions or show superiority. He listened, answered, and let people continue working. Everything looked stable and balanced. Velrana crossed her arms. "Your subordinates are not afraid of you." Elias paused as if thinking about the best way to answer. "They do not need to be." "Fear is efficient," she said. "It keeps warriors alert." "Maybe for a short time," he responded, "but fear fades. Respect lasts longer." Velrana stared at him, trying to decide if this was philosophy or propaganda. She decided to observe further. Elias moved to a smaller conference room and began a morning briefing with his officers. Velrana sat in the corner, silent but alert, listening to every detail. He spoke with calm authority, giving clear instructions and asking for updates. He questioned his officers, but he never insulted or belittled them. When someone made a mistake in a report, Elias corrected it quietly and suggested a solution instead of demanding excuses. His officers thanked him instead of shrinking in fear. This behavior did not make sense to Velrana. A commander who led without intimidation risked losing control. Yet Elias held the room with simple confidence. People followed not because they feared him, but because they trusted him. How do humans survive like this? Velrana thought. How do they fight wars without shouting? Her datapad buzzed with a new private file. She opened it and wrote a new line. Human leadership technique. Quiet control. After the briefing, Elias turned to her. "Would you like to join me for breakfast?" Velrana paused. She had expected him to eat alone or with officers. She had expected the moment to end after she finished observing. Instead, he continued to treat her like she was welcome in everything he did. She followed anyway. She would not appear hesitant. The officers' dining hall was modest, filled with simple tables and trays of food. The humans all stood when she entered, not with fear, but with formal respect. Then, they continued eating. No one whispered or stared. Velrana felt more off balance than before. Humans, too calm. Elias picked simple food, bread, and cooked vegetables, and sat at an empty table. Velrana sat across from him. He did not force conversation or ask about her life. Instead, he ate quietly, waiting for her to speak if she wished. She studied him like a puzzle piece that refused to show its edges. "Do you always act this way?" she finally asked. He looked up. So quiet, so patient, as if nothing here is a struggle. Elias smiled slightly. Not in a mocking way. "There is struggle everywhere. But I don't want to add more pressure to someone who is also struggling." That answer was too gentle. Too simple. Velrana had heard kindness before, but always with purpose. Charity, if used well, created loyalty. Softness could be a weapon just as sharp as steel. But when she looked into his eyes, she did not see calculation. She saw sincerity. Elias continued, "You have been taken from your home, your people, and placed here because politicians decided this was the price of peace. I can't imagine that has been easy." Velrana froze. No one had said that out loud before. Not even her own advisors. They expected her to handle the burden without acknowledgement. Yet this human had recognized it immediately. She kept her tone strict. "Cathari royalty does not complain." "I didn't say you complained," Elias said gently. "But someone doesn't have to speak for their situation to be difficult." Velrana found no answer. She returned to her food, unsure how she felt. Annoyed? Seen? Confused? She did not know. Later, Elias moved to the engineering deck. Velrana followed silently. The engineers greeted him with small waves or nods, respecting him without fear. When a machine malfunctioned, Elias crouched next to the technician, helped diagnose the issue, and stayed until it was solved. A captain working with his hands among engineers was something Velrana had never seen. In the Cathari Empire, officers did not step down from rank to assist subordinates. It would be seen as weakness. But to humans, it seemed to build unity. Again, her datapad opened. Human culture. Leader works beside subordinate. Possible morale strategy. Elias stood and wiped his hands clean. "Everything clear?" he asked the technician. "Yes, Captain. Thank you." Velrana watched closely. Elias smiled again. Warm, but modest. He did not look proud or victorious. Just satisfied that a job had been done. Later in the day, they passed a small glass observation deck overlooking the stars. Elias stood still and looked out. Velrana joined him, arms behind her back. The stars reflected in the window, bright and endless. "Why did you agree to this marriage?" she asked finally. Elias took a moment before answering. "Because, if peace is going to work, someone has to take the first step. I won't ask someone else to make a sacrifice that I'm not willing to make myself." Velrana stared at him. No Cathari commander would have said such words. No one would willingly tie their life to another species unless they had something to gain. But Elias seemed to gain nothing, and yet he accepted it. Is he a fool? She wondered. Or is humanity much stronger than I understood? By the time they returned to her quarters, Velrana had more questions than answers. Elias stopped at the door, giving her space again. "If you need anything," he said softly, "I will be nearby." She stepped inside without replying. When the door closed, she pressed her palm to her forehead and exhaled slowly. Humans were supposed to be simple warriors. Yet Elias Mercer was not simple at all. He was a mystery she now felt determined to solve. 2 weeks passed aboard the human station, and Velrana's understanding of Captain Elias Mercer had not become clearer. If anything, her confusion had grown. She spent every day observing him, following him through his work shifts, meals, reports, and interactions with the crew. She had documented more than 50 observations, yet none revealed a hidden motive. Elias never tried to pressure her, impress her, or demand anything in return for his kindness. He simply lived every day with calm patience, as if that was the most natural way to exist. To Velrana, this was deeply unsettling. She had grown up in a world where every action had intention and ambition. Even kindness was political. She waited for the moment he would show his true tactics. She was certain it would come. But for now, she watched. One evening, Velrana stood inside the observation deck, watching the stars pass slowly outside. The lights were dim, the space silent, except for the soft hum of engines. She was alone, planning her next step in understanding Elias. She believed she had seen him remain calm under normal circumstances, but she still did not know how he reacted under pressure. That was what she needed to observe next. A commander could behave kindly in peace, but true nature appeared during conflict. She did not expect the test to arrive so soon. The emergency alarms broke the silence. Red lights flashed, and a calm but urgent voice echoed across the halls. Security alert. Unauthorized ship detected approaching Terra Nova station. All personnel to readiness stations. Velrana stood straight at once. The words repeated, and she recognized a deeper meaning. Unauthorized often meant hostile. She left the observation deck quickly and moved to the command center. When she entered, the room was filled with controlled activity. Officers spoke quickly, but clearly. Crew worked on data screens, and tactical maps updated in real time. Elias stood in the center of the room, listening to reports from several officers at once. He did not shout. He did not panic. His voice remained steady. Maintain communications blackout until we know their intention. Do not activate weapon systems yet. Velrana approached him and spoke quietly. Who is attacking? Elias answered just as calmly. Cathari extremists, not part of your government. They have declared the marriage a stain on warrior honor and demand your return. Velrana's jaw tightened. She knew the type. Not loyal to empire, or honor only loyal to their own ego and pride. You should have sounded battle stations, she said firmly. If you wait, they could fire first. Elias shook his head. If we activate weapons too soon, they will see it as provocation. I want every attempt at peace made before a single shot is fired. Velrana looked at him sharply. That is risky. Respect earns loyalty. Peace moves can be mistaken for weakness. Elias turned to face her fully. Sometimes, peace is worth the risk. The alarm repeated overhead. Velrana watched the tactical map update as the enemy ship closed distance. Her skin prickled with rising tension. She expected Elias to shift to aggression, but instead, he switched to communication channel. This is Captain Elias Mercer of Terra Nova Station, he said, voice steady. Identify yourselves and state your intention. A harsh voice answered from the speaker. Velrana immediately recognized the accent of a radical Cathari war faction. Release the princess to us. The marriage is an insult to our people. If you refuse, we will retrieve her by force. Some officers in the command center looked tense, expecting Elias to respond with threats. Instead, he took a slow breath. Princess Velrana is here under diplomatic protection, he answered. She is not held prisoner. She is free to make her own decisions. The hostile voice growled. Humans lie. She is being used as a symbol. Turn her over or face destruction. Elias did not raise his voice. I will not hand over anyone, willingly or unwillingly, to a group threatening violence. Velrana watched him closely. This was the moment she had been waiting for. No one could remain calm now, but Elias did. His tone was steady, his posture firm. He was not intimidated or angry, only resolved. The extremist ship cut communications and began powering weapons. Officers looked to Elias for orders. Shields up, Elias said. Prepare point defense system, but do not fire unless they attack first. Velrana frowned. If you wait for them to strike, you may lose the advantage. Elias met her eyes. If we fire first, we become the aggressor. I'm not giving them that victory. Even now, With danger seconds away, he chose principle over dominance. Velrana struggled to understand. In her world, strength meant striking before the enemy could. But Elias believed strength came from restraint. A moment later, the enemy fired. The shields shimmered from the blast. The impact shook the station, but did not breach. "Return fire," Elias commanded. "Disable weapons only." Weapons on the station responded with precision. Instead of destroying the enemy ship, they focused on disabling its engines and weapon systems. Within seconds, the threat was neutralized. "Enemy vessel disabled," a tactical officer announced. "They are requesting ceasefire." Elias nodded slowly. "Open channel." Velrana crossed her arms, expecting him to lecture the extremists. Instead, Elias spoke with a calm tone. "This attack was unnecessary. No one here wanted to harm you. We have disabled your weapons. You still have a chance to stand down and avoid more loss." The voice of the extremist captain came on again, filled with anger but no longer confident. "You defend the princess instead of using her against us. Why?" Elias responded simply, "Because she deserves safety and dignity, no matter where she stands." Velrana stared at him, stunned. The room was silent, waiting for the extremist response. Finally, the enemy ship powered down completely. Medical and security teams organized to bring the attackers aboard as prisoners. Elias gave orders to ensure they were treated correctly, not punished beyond lawful handling. Velrana watched silently, her mind racing. When the situation settled, she followed Elias into a smaller briefing room. He began reviewing reports, but Velrana spoke first. "You stood beside me," she said slowly, "even when the attackers were my own people." Elias looked up. "They may share your blood, but they do not share your intentions." Velrana had no reply for a moment. She paced, thinking. Humans were not supposed to be so idealistic under fire. They were not supposed to defend another species with such unwavering principle. She finally asked the question she had been trained never to ask. "Why risk your life for me? A stranger, an alien?" Elias seemed surprised by the question, but his answer came without hesitation. "Because peace isn't just a treaty. If we want a future where humans and Cathari stand together, then someone has to prove that trust can exist. Today, that someone was me." Velrana felt the walls around her begin to crack. She had expected deception, calculation, or ambition. Instead, she found something far more difficult to counter: sincerity. No strategy, no hidden agenda. Just a man who believed in doing the right thing. She realized then that she feared something more than war. She feared that he might actually be genuine, because if Elias Mercer was truly the man he appeared to be, then everything she believed about humans, and maybe her own culture, might be incomplete. For the first time since arriving on the station, Velrana no longer wanted to analyze him. She wanted to understand him. Velrana did not know how many hours passed after the battle before the station returned to its normal rhythm. Human crews repaired panels, updated tactical logs, and cleaned the corridors where emergency equipment had been deployed. Everyone worked with steady focus, not panicked movement. The crisis had come suddenly and ended quickly. But the humans did not celebrate or complain. They simply accepted it as another day of duty. Elias spent most of the evening reviewing reports. Velrana observed him quietly, still trying to understand what she had seen. She had expected a commander to show pride after a victory, or anger at being attacked, or frustration that Cathari extremists had targeted them. Instead, Elias looked calm, simply relieved that no one had died. His victory was not disabling the hostile ship. His victory was preventing the conflict from growing into something worse. When he finally closed his report tablet and stood, Velrana followed him out of the command center. They walked toward the residential wing of the station in silence. Velrana could feel questions pressing against the inside of her mind. She had been raised to believe that vulnerability was weakness, that questions revealed one's uncertainties. Yet today, she had discovered that her confident understanding of humans may have been built on sand. They reached a quiet corner near the observation deck. Elias leaned against the railing, looking out at the stars. The ship drifted gently in the darkness, surrounded by golden lights from distant systems. Velrana stood beside him, her arms crossed behind her back. She did not speak immediately. She was not sure how to begin. Elias seemed to sense that she wanted answers. He waited, giving her space to speak first. Humans did that often, she noticed. They created silence, not to pressure others, but to make room for them. She finally said, "You should be angry." Elias turned slightly. "Why?" "My people attacked your station. They demanded my return. They insulted your honor. Any commander would take that personally." Elias smiled softly, not in amusement, but in gentle understanding. "They attacked out of fear," he said. "Fear makes people do reckless things." Velrana frowned. "You make excuses for enemies." "No," Elias said, shaking his head. Velrana stared at him. Understanding was not a word her people used for enemy behavior. Enemies were to be defeated, not analyzed for emotional reasons. Yet Elias spoke as if understanding was not only practical, but necessary. "You keep insisting on believing the best in others," she said, "even when they try to harm you." He shrugged lightly. "Maybe. Or maybe, I've seen too much harm to want to cause more. Unless absolutely required." Velrana turned her gaze to the stars. She did not know how to explain the weight she carried. So much of her training, her upbringing, her worldview, had been built on strength, control, and certainty. And here stood a man with none of those displays, yet he had stopped a battle with a single decision. She finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. "Where did you learn to be this way?" Elias took a moment, as if deciding how to share something personal. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "Humans have a long history of war. Too long. We've fought ourselves far more than we've fought other species. And every time we started a war, someone believed they were righteous. Someone believed survival required violence. Someone believed dominance was the only way." He exhaled slowly, eyes distant. "But peace never begins with the side that wants to win. It begins with the side willing to stop the cycle." Velrana looked at him with genuine confusion. "You say it like peace is a shield strong enough to protect you." "It can be," Elias answered, "if enough people choose it." She shook her head. "That is a hope, not a defense. Sometimes, hope is the only thing strong enough to change a world." Velrana was silent. She could not argue with him, not because she agreed, but because she did not understand how someone could live with such belief and still survive in a galaxy full of danger. She wanted to know. Any tension too proper? She wanted to know. She needed to know. She asked, "Do you not fear betrayal? Do you not fear that your trust will be used against you?" Elias looked directly at her. "Of course I do. Trust always carries risk. But living without trust is another kind of death." Velrana felt something tighten in her chest. She did not have a word for it. A realization? A discomfort? A shake in the foundation of a belief she had carried all her life. He continued, "I don't want this marriage to be a chain for either of us. I want it to mean something not just for politicians, not just for our governments, but for people. If humans and Kethari are ever going to truly stand together, someone has to show it's possible." Velrana took a slow breath. She had come here prepared for an enemy disguised as an ally. She had not come prepared for someone willing to take a personal risk for peace. Finally, she said in a low voice, "In the Kethari Empire, marriage is not soft. Marriage is partnership in battle, in strength, In duty. It is two warriors facing the universe together. Elias nodded. That sounds beautiful. Velrana blinked, surprised by the response. She had expected dismissal or confusion. Instead, Elias respected her values instantly. She continued. But humans do not seem to treat marriage the same way. Elias smiled gently. Maybe we don't call it a battlefield, but we also believe marriage is facing the universe together. Velrana looked away. You speak as if we already stand together, she said quietly. But I have not yet agreed to stand beside you. Elias nodded again. I know. That's why I'm not demanding it. I want you to choose it. That was new. Completely new. In her culture, choice was for those with power. Duty was for everyone else. Elias did not treat her marriage as a command. He treated it as a bond that required genuine consent. That was both strange and powerful. Velrana stepped toward him slowly. What if I never choose you? What if I remain here only because the treaty demands it? Then I will still treat you with respect, Elias answered. Because who you are does not depend on how much you give to me. Velrana froze. She felt something she had not felt in years. Not fear. Not anger. Something dangerous. Respect. Not because of her title. Not because of her duty. But because she was herself. Elias turned back toward the stars. After a moment, Velrana asked quietly, Do you think peace can truly last between our peoples? Whence peace? He answered with a small smile. It will, if enough people decide to stop repeating the mistakes of history. Velrana looked at him, and for the first time, she saw not a puzzle she needed to solve, but a person she wanted to understand. The walls around her beliefs did not crumble completely, but a crack had formed, and once a crack appeared, the foundation could never be the same. That night, when she returned to her quarters, she opened her private tablet to add her usual analysis notes. But instead of a report, she typed something she had not expected. I no longer study the human to uncover motive. I study him because I want to understand how such a person exists. When she set the tablet aside, Velrana realized something else. Something quiet and unspoken. For the first time since arriving, she did not feel alone. Velrana stood beside Elias on the balcony of the station, looking out at the spreading stars. Only a few days had passed since the extremist attack, yet everything inside her felt completely changed. Before meeting Elias, she had imagined a future of duty without heart, a marriage that would be cold and formal, just another sacrifice for her empire. Now, she found herself thinking of the future, not with fear, but with possibility. She knew she trusted him, and more importantly, she wanted to. But the galaxy was not suddenly peaceful just because her heart had changed. After the attack failed, the Cathari extremists went underground. The governments of Earth and the Cathari Empire were working together to identify them. But the political situation was delicate. Many officials blamed the marriage for the chaos, claiming it was an unnecessary experiment that stirred ancient anger. Velrana had heard the speeches, the arguments, the speeches disguised as threats. Yet every time she looked at Elias, she knew she could not let others twist their bond into something ugly or fragile. She had been silent for so long, standing behind him and trying to hide her discomfort with the role she was forced into. But now, she felt ready to stand beside him openly, not as a symbol, but as a partner. Elias noticed her long silence as she stood beside him. His voice was soft, as always. You're thinking about the council debate tomorrow. Velrana nodded slowly. Yes. They will ask questions. They will accuse. They will say this marriage causes only damage. A pause. In the beginning, I might have agreed with them. Elias gave a small smile. I know. She looked down then. A rare sign of nervousness. because there was something she had not yet said out loud. Something that had been building slowly inside her, from the first time he stood up for her in public. "I do not want them to speak for me anymore," she said quietly. "If they say this union is fake, I will answer myself. I want them to hear my voice." Elias did not look surprised. If anything, he looked proud. "Then I'll be there with you," he said. "But say what you believe, not what anyone expects." She breathed out slowly. She wondered how humans learned to speak in a way that always touched the heart so gently. In Cathari culture, truth was often spoken like a weapon. Humans spoke truth like something you offered for the other person to hold. The next morning, the council chamber was filled with representatives from both civilizations. Velrana walked in standing tall, wearing royal armor not to intimidate, but to show that she came not as a frightened bride, but as a princess who still honored her people. Elias walked beside her calmly in his navy blue uniform, and for the first time she realized they moved in perfect step. The council members whispered quietly among themselves, some curious, others hostile. The debate began with a senior Cathari counselor pounding his staff against the ground. "This marriage," he said sharply, "has already resulted in violence, disruption, and the embarrassment of our empire. We demand to know what value remains in this arrangement." Murmurs filled the chamber. Velrana felt all eyes turned toward her. Before Elias could answer, she stepped forward. She saw a few eyebrows lift, surprised that she would speak first. Perhaps shocked that she took initiative. Her voice was calm. "In the beginning," she said, "I did not want this marriage. I believed the propaganda I was raised with. I believed humans were weak, manipulative, and greedy." She paused, letting the silence settle. "But I was wrong." The surprise in the chamber deepened. Even some of the humans leaned forward now. "I believed a mate showed strength by control, by dominance, by force of will. That was the world I understood. But Elias showed another way. He offered peace when he could have demanded authority. He listened even when I said nothing. He protected me not to prove himself, but because he cared." The Cathari counselors shifted uncomfortably, unused to affection being spoken of in political halls. But Velrana continued, "I once feared he had a hidden motive. I was sure his kindness was a strategy. Now I know it is simply his way of living. Human strength is not measured by how loudly they shout or how many they conquer. Their strength lies in choosing compassion even when they are afraid, and in standing firm even when they are not the strongest in the room." Slowly, the room grew quiet. Elias watched her with calm pride, his hands folded behind his back, his expression respectful but clearly moved. She turned her gaze to the chamber. "This marriage has not weakened the alliance. It has shown both our peoples that there is another path, one where understanding is not a defeat, but a victory. I was once ashamed of this union. Now I stand here by choice." She lifted her chin slightly. "And I will continue to do so." Some counselors nodded thoughtfully. Others kept stern expressions. But even they seemed shaken by the sincerity in her words. A human ambassador rose next, clearing his throat. "If Princess Velrana is willing to stand for the treaty," he said, "it speaks louder than any political declaration." The meeting ended with no immediate decision, but the balance had changed. Velrana could feel it. The council had not approved everything, yet the air in the room was noticeably different. They looked at Elias now not just as a human husband, but as someone who had earned her respect. And in Cathari politics, respect could shift nations. Later, when she and Elias left the chamber, she exhaled slowly, feeling her heart settle. Elias walked beside her quietly, as he always did, unless words were needed. "You spoke beautifully," he finally said. "It was the truth," she answered, her tone gentler than before. "I was afraid before. I thought if I showed my feelings, they would call me weak. But humans. She gave him a small, rare smile. Humans do not fear soft hearts. And Cathari do not lack them, he replied. The walk back to their quarters was calm. The threat of extremists was not gone. The political battles ahead would not disappear. Peace, she realized, was not a single victory. It was a long path walked together, step by step. When they stepped inside their suite, Elias prepared tea while Velrana removed her armor. She felt lighter, not because the challenges had ended, but because she no longer faced them alone. She sat beside him at the small table, and for a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Not as a human and a Cathari, not as a diplomatic arrangement, but as two people learning each other day by day. Velrana spoke softly. I used to think this marriage was a cage. And now? Elias asked gently. She touched his hand, a gesture rarely made by Cathari, unless deeply meant. Now, I think it is a bridge. He smiled then, the warm, quiet smile she had grown used to. Then we'll keep building it. She nodded. The galaxy outside might still be uncertain, but inside this small room, something true and rare had begun to grow. Not fear, not duty, but a connection chosen freely, something that neither war nor politics could force. A future had begun, not from conquest, but from understanding. And as Velrana sat beside Elias, she realized that humans truly had a strength unlike any she had ever known. It was not a strength of weapon or muscle, but of heart, and it had changed her life forever.